Welcome to Slow Down and Speed Up, where we have real one-time coaching sessions with startup founders working through the challenges of leadership. I'm your host and executive coach, Brian Wang. Today, we're joined by Ryan Estes, a founder who once toured as a musician, but now runs his life on tight schedules and spreadsheets. He comes to the session asking the question, how do I balance structure and creativity between the artist and the operator? As we explore this tension, we touch on something that's a bit non-obvious. The productivity mechanisms that help us succeed can also end up cutting us off from joy. For Ryan, this manifests as walls built between his responsible business self and his creative musical identity. Many founders experience this compartmentalization without realizing it, sacrificing passion for productivity, creative expression for control. If you've ever felt disconnected from what originally inspired you, or sense something vital has been missing from your leadership journey despite outward success, this session contains important wisdom about reclaiming those lost parts of yourself. All right, let's dive in. Hey, Ryan, it's a pleasure to see you today.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, so we spoke a little bit before this, and I'm just going to start right off and ask you, what are we working on? What are we here for today?
Yeah, I'm really appreciate this time. This is something I've been thinking about a lot, and it's an apparent conflict of interest, we'll say, between structure and rigor and improvisation and creativity. So specifically, the context would be in business, and I'll probably use a lot of music metaphors because a lot of my experience with creativity has been in music. And there's a way that structure and improvisation work out really well. And probably the best example of that is Charlie Parker. And Charlie Parker, if people don't know, was possibly the best saxophone player that ever lived. He invented bebop music. And he had what he would call woodshedding, which meant that he went to the woodshed to practice every single song and every single key over and over and over and over and over again. And as a result of that, he was able to improvise like nobody before or since, So for me, there's this tension here between the rigor of woodshedding and then the ultimate outcome of creativity, which involves release. The fastest way to destroy your improvisation, saxophone or otherwise, is try to wonder where the next note's going to come from. You just allow it to come. Yeah. Now, the one thing I'll kind of add to this story is the reason Charlie Parker became Bird Parker and went through this kind of transformation was he was in St. Louis and, he was a kid, probably, I think 14 or 15, and got on the bandstand and started soloing. And it was so bad, the drummer took his cymbal off of the cymbal stand and threw it at him. And so he left humiliated and, dedicated himself that would never happen again. And certainly it never did. Yeah. So that's what I'd like to talk about. What's this tension between creativity and improvisation and rigor and structure? Largely, if you're thinking about productivity, time blocking, everything that goes into running a business has to be very regimented to make sure everything stays clean. But then as a creative person, an entrepreneur, you have to allow opportunities for improvisation to emerge.
That all makes sense to me, both from a business perspective and also just from a musical perspective. And listening to you, I hear you talk about the tension at a high level. I'm wondering, can you spend a little bit of time describing how you experience that tension that you're describing?
Yeah, it's interesting because there was an article that got me thinking about this. And it was a study done about product hunt launches. And it was essentially on two sides of the table. One side was productivity apps. And then the other side was games, like video games, iOS games, something like that. And they did a Venn diagram of the audiences and the people that contribute to the campaign, and they were completely separate. So there was the spirit of the thing was kind of bashing productivity culture, and it made me look at it in a different way, because I have had to train myself to be very regimented, largely, I think, because I am a creative person. And perhaps other entrepreneurs can kind of relate to that, where it's like you get into business as a creative expression and you end up in spreadsheets and QuickBooks, and HR documents. So, the tension to me is, am I providing myself enough room or with nothing, no scheduling, no agendas, just literally the uncarved block. And how should I be like approaching that if I am truly looking at kind of a creative endeavor?
Just to make sure I'm understanding you, Ryan, are you saying that there's some sense that like maybe you're not providing yourself enough of that open space, or is it that not enough structure, or maybe somewhere in between?
I think so. I think I think I'm looking at it as like a massively undervalued use of time.
The open space.
The open space. Yeah. I mean, and I've been a meditator for a long time, but I never take the intention of my sitting practice as a place for creativity. Rather, creativity is a great persona that will come to me when I'm sitting, but I allow that to go just as anything else, business or anything else that comes through. So, but even that is something that's scheduled on my calendar and it's very regimented and rigorous, So, okay. So this is the kind of tension is all of this productivity gains actually hindering the company and everything else I'm trying to do? Is it in the way? Is it a distraction?
Yeah. So let's just play with it for a second. Let's say it was a distraction and you were to change this, like what would you actually want this thing to look like instead?
That's the scary part. I don't know.
Cool. Let's hang out there then.
I don't know. How do you release the reins a little bit? This could probably be another place that I'm challenged with, is delegating, trusting people, allowing things to happen, as opposed to like, I don't think I'm a micromanager or I'm like overbearing in any sense, but definitely I'm keeping everything close to me. You know what I mean?
Okay. So there's like a thing here around control. And there's some sense that like, I don't know what I would do if I let go of a little bit of that structure and control.
I think so. And I think I have a hunch that it's not serving me, that there's something interesting around the corner if I can get to it,
Cool. Is it cool if we just explore that in real time then?
You bet.
That thing. Yeah. Okay, cool. So my first question there would be, yeah, so let's say you were able to like turn the dial down, like let's pretend there's like some like a fader, right? Music analogy. So there's a fader on a mixer, and now you're turning the control down like several decibels right here.
Yeah.
What would that feel like? What would you have to feel in that situation?
When I do that, I end up feeling lonely and isolated and out of the loop and uninformed and by myself. If I was like to really get to the core of it, like what the feeling in my body is like a kind of an ache and a hunger, like, oh, well, I don't know what's going on. And it makes me feel separate, and that's not a good feeling.
Sure. Is it all right if we hang out with that just for a little bit right now?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So you described like this loneliness, like where do you experience that in the body?
I think kind of like, let me see, in like the stomach, and I feel it in my stomach and a tightness up the front of my esophagus, I think is like a pulling in, like a curling, a hunching feeling, like a constriction, I think.
Great. Yeah. Constriction, curling, kind of sounds like it's moving up and down in this area.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And it seems to have something to do with control as well. Like if you turn down the control, then the valence of this feeling seems to be more noticeable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing with control too is it served me well. I've had positive outcomes from like really being like, having my hands in all the pots, So there's kind of like a historical memory there where it's like, hey, if you do this, good things happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you have two good reasons to keep the control
to keep it going. Yeah, exactly.
There's like these like great outcomes, and then also it seems to also mean you don't need to feel that constriction, that curling that you were describing, loneliness, right?
Yeah.
So, if you're still in touch with that feeling of the loneliness, I wonder, let's say you were giving it voice. It was trying to say something to you, Ryan. Like, what would it be saying?
Boy, you know, I think the voice is very paranoid. You know, this is almost like a key marker that I notice is like if I'm going through it, then I'll have this feeling of paranoia, like the whole world's against you. Everyone's conspiring against you. This would be if it gets loud. And then when I hear that, I'm like, oh, okay. I need to make some changes because now I'm getting this like paranoid sensation, you know, the little demon on the shoulder, the little angel on the shoulder, that demon, it's very paranoid and scared, you know?
Yeah. And it's scared. It seems like part of the fear is that there's like, the world's against you. There's this oppositional sort of energy to it.
Yeah. And I know it's a little bit melodramatic, you know, it's also probably very self-centered to think that the world might conspire against me, you know?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's like, it's a feeling, you know, it's a feeling of like, oh man, I need to shift my dimension in some way. So I'm harmonizing with the universe and its patterns. So as I'm not pushing against the flow, like I need to like go with it a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So this voice is like, but this is my words, but it's like, you better watch out. Like things are dangerous. People are against you, right? Us versus them sort of energy.
Absolutely.
What it feels like.
Yeah.
And then your reaction to that is when you notice it, like, oh, I got to shift something. Do I have that right so far?
I think so. You know, I'm very averse to that sensation, you know, kind of what I've been taught over the years is that like the aversion is like the fatal blow. You know, it's like, of course, when great feelings emerge, you embrace those and you kind of run with those, and you love it. But when you have averse, you kind of want to run with it too, because it allows it to come in and leave, you know, as opposed to being like, oh my God, why am I such a psycho? You know, why am I so paranoid? Like that question, like questioning the question, you kind of create this death spiral, you know?
Yeah. You might be familiar with the idea of the second arrow. You familiar with this idea?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you're describing firing the second arrow. But let's say we move away from that for a moment. And let's say we're moving closer then to this paranoid voice. Okay. So we got this paranoid voice. And let's say we're just getting a little more curious about it. And let me just pause it. It's shielding you from something, protecting you from some feeling or some experience and it's doing that by saying like, oh, things are against you, like people are against you, you got to watch out. Like what is it trying to protect you from exactly?
What is it trying to protect me from? I don't know, probably like hurt and betrayal. You know, that's the thing I think with paranoia is like you might just be paranoid, but the world might be working against you too. It could be real. So, you know,
especially
I think
if you've been hurt before.
Absolutely. Yeah. And without a doubt, you know, all of us, the longer you live on planet Earth, the more you're going to be hurt and betrayed by people you love, by friends and family, by everybody. It's guaranteed to happen. So, you know, I think that, you know, it's a once bitten, twice shy, and a lot of like kind of our that little demon on the shoulder. Maybe it's an angel in disguise in the sense that like, hey, it's like trying to protect you from like, hey, you could get hurt again, you know? Yeah. I think maybe the bravery, which pulls you out of it, is like, okay, maybe being hurt is inevitable and that's the right thing to do because I want to live in a virtuous way or something like that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So two ways to look at it, I guess, but but also nonetheless very unpleasant, and also probably, delusional. It's like creating a potential future that doesn't exist yet, of course, but it's kind of latching on to like a potential negative outcome, as opposed to like that outcome being one of many, I think.
It's another form of control in some sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So how much then is that need for control a way to avoid the feeling of that hurt?
100%. Yeah. That's what it is. Definitely. But, if paranoia is a angel in disguise as a demon, the one way it doesn't work is it just destroys creativity. Like, I don't know if I look at creativity and like new ideas or like something to come out of nothing, I don't know where it comes from, but I know that it does not come from paranoia.
Sure. Yeah.
Although I have seen some journals of schizophrenics that are pretty cool,
So here's a question that might not make any sense, but what's the link between the pain and the creativity?
Probably a substantial one. I think I was going to say all of the great art, but I don't think that's true. But I think a lot of great art is derivative of pain.
Sure. Yeah. So the greatest, sad songs or art and movies.
Vincent van Gogh's entire catalog.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's definitely a seed. I mean, it's often, it's probably, the blues, right? It's like, why does the cage bird sing? There's like so many analogies of like, art becoming like a great channel for pain, I suppose.
Sure. So coming back to you, Ryan, like you turn the fader of control down a little bit so that you can then start to hear a little bit more of the angel devil and then the protection of that stuff underneath. What happens for you then?
What happens typically? Or what
happens for you right now in the present moment?
If I turn it down, I think it makes me uneasy. It makes me feel that the future is going into an uncertain direction, or have less certainty, or at least the illusion of certainty, and potentially like gives opportunity for those voices to start creeping in. There's like a busyness associated, I think, sometimes with work, that you're checking off all these tasks is very satisfying, check off tasks, get stuff done.
Yeah.
But also, like, maybe to the point of this conversation, is a lot of that busyness really just there to kind of subdue some potential, voice that's creeping in.
Yeah. In my experience, those voices tend not to stop talking when we're covering it over with the checklist.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just quieter. They're in the background waiting for you to wake up at 3 a.m.
Sure.
Then they get real loud.
What are you hearing it say right now, if anything?
Well, it's Monday. We're recording this Monday morning, and kind of, I have this gut check for myself, which is like, hey man, whatever seems unsurmountable on Monday morning is usually surmounted by Thursday afternoon, So there's definitely always this kind of circadian rhythm of like massive effort in the beginning of like, oh my gosh, how does all this stuff's going to come together? Like that kind of feeling. So I think I always bring that into a case of the Mondays, So, there's that. And then there's just this other feeling of like this great opportunity. I'm loving this conversation, and being able to like have a cool podcast with you is really cool. It just fires me up, makes me really excited, So for me, and also there's this question that we're talking about that's always kind of working its way around, and as we're talking about it, it seems like there is a link to like the pain perhaps of like betrayal and fear of being hurt, and the creative component that might harmonize this thing, in some way. And that perhaps it's like, maybe what it is it's not in the business arena. Maybe it's a blues song. You know what I mean? Maybe the problem isn't a conflict of productivity and creative at work. It's like, no, man, maybe you got some like some like hurt in you that needs to be like, soothed a little bit. Maybe write a blues song.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's this. I read this article once about this emotion called Leggett. It was considered to be a novel emotion, and the emotion, it was found by this anthropologist, I think in the Philippines, where it was like an indigenous tribe. And what would happen is there was different tribes that were, warring against each other. And let's say like your brother went to battle and didn't come back. He got killed by your ops. Well, what would happen is the tribe would gather around that night and they would start moaning. They start moaning like this, like guttural, like, whoa, like putting it out. And then everyone in the tribe would start like mimicking it. And like they would all be making this moaning sound, and they would work themselves into a frenzy and then be like, boom, and then go get their weapons and go set out and fight. So the emotion was kind of described as like this mourning and this like murderous rage, and I was like, that's a heck of an emotion to like find novelly, it's not like, it's very subtle and sublime, but something about that story resonated with me, and like, it's like you can hear that in certain music, mourning and murderous rage, whether it's like, there's like a haunting quality. Maybe that's the Charlie Parker thing. Maybe that's what Rage Against the Machine is tapping into. Maybe that's triads, minor triads. I don't know.
I totally get it. What made you think about that for your own self, right?
I think it's the ritual of it, the ritual of taking this horrible thing that's happened to you and like materializing it into the world. Like it's this chorus, this moaning chorus that comes into the world as being like a healing and motivating exercise.
Yeah.
So I suppose that's what I'm thinking of is like, okay, maybe there's like a ritual here. Maybe there's some kind of like creative ritual that you put in that, allows for some of the spontaneity and things to happen to be a ballast, I think maybe for the rigor or something.
Yeah. I mean, to reflect on that for a moment, I think that's exactly right that you're describing. There's a container, there is some set of steps that are predefined, but it's really just a container for the human expression to then expand into that. And who knows what that will actually end up looking like, right? There's a spontaneity to it and there's the expression to it. And I wonder what does that look like for you, Ryan? You started this conversation talking about the balance or the tension between structure, productivity control, and creativity and expression. But if we were to say, actually, these two things are not at odds, they can actually work well together. What does that look like here?
Yeah. Man, maybe I'm just trying to talk myself into making a record,
Have you ever done that?
Yeah. Former life, I was a touring musician. I made 3 records and did mixtapes and used to play all the time, And at one point, I was like, no more music. It's done. And that was it.
What was happening that made you say that?
I was playing a show and it didn't go the way I wanted to. They stiffed me on payment for probably the 12th time. I mean, the music industry is more corrupt than the boxing industry, and the boxing industry is the most corrupt business in the world. So I had 2 young children at the time, and was working on 2 bands and doing a bunch of stuff and just was exhausted, I think. And that kind of was the thing that really just ended the music career. But even more than that, I knew that I couldn't just dabble with music. It is so important to me. It was my entire world, my profession, everything, that I couldn't just like do it halfway. I had to like kill it. I have to be like, no more, And
like all or nothing.
All or nothing. Yep. And it's like, nope, no more music. Not working in this business anymore. I'm not making music. It's all over. It's done behind me, and move on. Now it's not that dramatic. Still I play songs here and there, and there's guitars kicking around my house all over the place. But there was definitely like a wall that came down and was like, no. You know what I mean? And this is probably the tension I'm discovering, is that it does seem to be a wall for me, is like all in creative or all in with, the rational, you know, rigor based kind of lifestyle, I suppose.
Right. Control, scheduling, left brain sort of.
Yeah, left brain, right brain, and there's just like, you know, a bulletproof wall in between them.
Yeah. I'm visualizing that wall. Like if it starts to come down a little bit or go however you want to visualize it, but like that, let's say like it's less impermeable, right? Now there's some actual like room to breathe between both worlds, let's call it. Like what does that produce for Ryan here?
If it's permeable,
yeah, less of this all or nothing.
I bet you I think it just made me happier, you know. I think it's probably pretty clear, you know. It's interesting, but again, like when I did that, you know, like I stopped listening to music and just went all in on podcasts, and then as a result, developed a whole career around podcasting. You know, so it's like, okay, well, yeah, there's the rational side of me is like, yeah, man, that's working for you, that's good, you know. But I think it's just like, for whatever reason, I have this like black or white tendency in here, but there's all this gray area, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that, like, you know, this would kind of creep in professionally first, but like that's where I put all my attention, you know. And I've been thinking about it for some time. I was in the woods in October for rifle season hunting, and I was like, and I was having such a good time, and I was just like, I'm going to write a list of all the things that I really like, you know. And most of it was food. I'm not going to lie. It was just like different items from a menu, pretty much. But like a lot of it was music too, you know, just things that I like to do to make me happy, you know. And I think there was like, you know, you get so busy, and I, you know, my kids now are in high school, and so it's just one thing after the other. There is no relenting, you know. And I'm so blessed and lucky that like I have a successful business and I have a beautiful family that loves me and is great. But the like speed and pace is like, it's intense. And I think I felt like I was like losing a little bit of like what I liked to do. Like I've kind of forgot. I have so many responsibilities. It's like, well, what do I enjoy doing? And there wasn't like a clear answer until I was like sitting in the woods and was like, oh no, you love green chili and tacos, you know, for sure. But you also really like music, you know, and it felt really good just to think about these things that I like to do, you know?
Yeah. So like when you were like in the woods, like just in nature, it sounds like you were slowing down, and then you were able to reconnect with these just simple things that really you enjoy, that feel really good to you in your system. And I don't know about you, but when I listen to you, that sounds like the opposite of rigid control. It sounds like there was this more of this sort of openness for you. Does that track?
Yeah, I think so. But you see, I still start making lists and action items.
Sure. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah, sure. I know. Yeah, no, but that was it. And it was actually comforting, you know. It was like, okay, yeah, you still like things. There's still things you like. There was been a lot of things that I've been doing that I'm just questioning. Like, I don't think I like this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's amazing when you just say it out loud.
Yeah, I know. Sitting on snowboarding, and I'm like, I love hanging out with my kids, but I don't think I like snowboarding anymore. I don't think I do. And it was like something I'd love forever, but I was like, I hate this. I'm not doing this anymore. Okay,
cool. So let's say you keep following that. You just give yourself permission to name what I don't like this, I do like that. And then you orient yourself around that. Like what happens then?
I don't know. I think I'm happier, you know. I don't know. I also feel weird with saying this out of my mouth. Does it seem strange that you forget what you like and what you don't like? Is that odd?
I think it's actually incredibly common.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's, you know, don't know, maybe that's how you go with the flow. It's like you just pick up a couple branches along the side if you like branches, to mix metaphors all over the place here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just to reflect a bit from what I'm picking up from you, Ryan, like part of what I hear is that you actually are really, really good at following your interests, your desires, the things that you enjoy, and also you've encountered a lot of things along the way that resulted in hurt, burnout, intensity. That has its way of sweeping somebody up as well. And there's like a way in which we can lose ourselves in that. Maybe there's some sense of obligation that comes in to play along the way as well. I'm just maybe speculating a little bit based off of what you said. And so to your question, like, is it normal? Like, do people do this where like they sort of forget what they like and dislike? I think it's there's a way in which many of us can lose touch with that, right? They lose touch with what's authentic to them because they replace that with what's expected of them, what they're supposed to do, external obligation, that sort of thing. So that doesn't seem strange to me at all. I guess as I'm saying it, I'm curious, like, how's it landing as I reflect it back to you?
Yeah, I think that's it, and I think too that I've led such a fun and creative career. Like the way I've, earned a living over the years is just like, it's so fun, and it's like, and I have a lot of passion and a lot of enthusiasm when I'm going towards something. And I think part of that is like making sure that what I'm going towards is very clear. And when it's not, and I think too, like the more complicated your lives get, and the more you add families and businesses and stuff, it definitely gets complex, that you kind of lose track of like where you're headed. And so it's hard to sustain the amount of enthusiasm, or rather maybe the enthusiasm, kind of morphs into something else. Cause I've always felt like I've got extra energy, I've got extra energy I've got to burn off, usually through, physical activities, but also through like my pursuits. And if I have extra energy and it's channeled as enthusiasm for the mission of where I'm going, it's perfect. But like if the mission starts to get hazy because life is complicated and there's a lot of different things you're balancing, the enthusiasm, the extra energy changes its tone.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think is in the way of having the clarity of mission?
What is in the way? Boy, I don't know. I think kind of what you were talking about, obligation, as like a, again, I think, if you want to be a responsible, productive person, then you pick up as much responsibility and obligation as you possibly can hold. As much as you can carry, as strong as your back is, take every ounce on. Because honestly, I think that you got an obligation to the world. Like you owe the world your best, but it's tiring, and maybe it's counterproductive to, the artist in me that just wants to be fly and be free,
Yeah.
So
it's like you contain these multiple selves here, like the part of you that's give the world its the best, and I owe it to the world, and then there's just this artist also in you that's needing some more space, from what I hear.
Yeah, totally. And for some reason, there's a wall between them. I have a hard time like opening the two and letting them chill together, opening the door. It's like I'm totally free, and I tasted that, So, or it's like, nope, you're taking on as much responsibility as you possibly can because the world needs responsible men.
Huh. Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's pretend, if you're game for this, like let's pretend the two of them are seated together at a table, and you're facilitating some dialogue between them, right? I know, seems like they might not see eye to eye here, right? But what is it that the artist doesn't understand about the guy who's operating from responsibility that it would be important for him to know?
My first instinct is they'd be critical of each other first, and then they'd be encouraging in some manner. And it's probably like why I love podcasting and why I love conversation in general, is because you'll meet each other in the middle.
Yeah.
Eventually you're going to be like, hey, man, actually, we got a lot more in common than we thought,
Right. Yeah. So they worked through some of that stuff to get to some common understanding here.
I think they would immediately, but there's just no dialogue there. I think, maybe for the sake of hyperbole and somehow bifurcating my personality into these two distinct entities, it's helpful to like look at them as like they're not talking to each other. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. They're probably completely reliant on each other, for sure. Yeah. But they're not willing to like admit dependency because they want supremacy.
Okay. Well, you were just a minute ago, you were sort of referring to a world where they're getting along here. So, like, it sounds like you're imagining some scenario where they are actually in dialogue.
100%.
Yeah. How do you get there? How do they get there?
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I think I just need to write some songs. Like actually just do it. Use the rigor part of my brain to, time block a weekend and just go write some songs and hang out with myself. I think that ultimately might be just it.
Yeah. Seems to link back to what we were touching on earlier, just like what was that novel emotion you're describing? Like, okay, we're gonna enter into the ritual, but then we're gonna fill the space with our expression.
Yeah. I think that's probably it, and then let things fall where they may. It's just funny to say this stuff and realize that like it's like I want this all to like have merit. Like it's like I'll do it if I feel like I'm gonna get something out of it. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you this. So let's play with that. So when this tribe or this group of people are out there in mourning, are they doing it because they need to get something out of it?
No, I think they're just channeling something that exists. I think they're just hit that frequency and like they're just in that. I don't think they're trying to be productive with it at all. I think, yeah. I put when I kind of went no music and was like, okay, I'm being very selective with my time because I only have so much of it and I have people that are counting on me, so what I did is I said, I'm not doing anything that isn't of service, fun, and makes money. It has to make money for me to do it. Otherwise I'm letting people down, So this, which worked great, it was like, boy, that really kept me on a straight and narrow because otherwise I would be in my closet writing love songs forever. I just would, and it's like, you gotta do something else, buddy. So the parameters really worked well, but I think there might be, I think there's a cost, and maybe the cost isn't worth it. To some point, it's like that was 15 years ago, maybe. About 15 years ago that I really made those kind of like very rigid rules for myself. And it's like, maybe you relax.
Yeah. It was 15 years ago. That's not now. How much is that needed now?
Yeah.
Is the question.
Yeah. How much,
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to hearing the music that you put out from here.
Let's just start with Murderous Rage Moaning.
Oh yeah.
That would be a
great album opener. Hell yeah.
It's so funny. Nice. Yeah, man. I could do that.
I love it. This feels like a pretty good spot. I don't know about you. Like, how are you feeling I'm just like tuning into where you are now.
It feels good. This is a really unexpected kind of conversation. I'm not sure. Do most of your episodes go like this?
I got to say, this is probably one of the more unique ones we've done.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt really good. I appreciate it. Like sometimes you got to like, I got a palette of all these thoughts and emotion going through me, and putting it out like this, like makes it seem pretty clear. Like there doesn't necessarily need to be a tension between this and that,
Yeah.
So,
well, let me ask you this, Ryan, as we start to close out then. Just tuning into where you are now, and then you look to how we started this conversation. What do you want to highlight? What do you want to really underscore coming out from the session?
I want to highlight how much I appreciate what you do. This has been awesome. I think it's got to be very fulfilling and satisfying, talking through people and their weird angels and demons on the shoulder, So that's really cool. I don't have the opportunity to do a lot of conversations like this, so I really appreciate it. I think it's also just interesting that it like actually did bring up a lot of emotion in me. Like this is something that like needs attention, and busyness, as much as I love work, it's not gonna do it. I need something else. I can tell if this is what's on the tip of my tongue right now, Monday morning or Monday afternoon, it's like, all right, this is probably deserves some attention. So I'm going to pay heed to that.
Awesome. Well, I am really, really looking forward to hearing the output, and I love how you started this conversation talking about Charlie Parker, and now I want to know what Ryan Estes comes up with. And I'll be the first Spotify subscriber.
Nice. All right, man. I'll let you know.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on.
Appreciate it, Brian. Thank you so much.
The walls we build to protect ourselves often become the very barriers that block our growth. Ryan's session illustrates how many founders construct rigid systems, not just for productivity, but as shields against vulnerability. I've witnessed this pattern repeatedly in my coaching practice. What presents as productivity challenges frequently masks a deeper disconnection from authentic joy. For Ryan, his musical creativity has been deliberately walled off for years in service of responsibility and obligation. Now, two elements stood out to me from this session. First, our protective mechanisms develop for good reason, but they often outlive their usefulness. Secondly, reconnection doesn't require abandoning structure. It's not black or white. We may just need more permeable boundaries between different aspects of ourselves. So here's the question worth considering. What parts of yourself have you shut down in the name of success? The path forward isn't about perfect balance, but recognizing when the walls we've constructed have become too rigid. Sometimes growth comes not when we push harder, but when we loosen the grip of control just enough to let our authenticity emerge again. So I invite you to consider what that might look like in your own leadership journey. All right, that's another episode of Slow Down to Speed Up. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to give it a like, subscribe, and a positive review in your podcast app. See you at the next one.